You are listening to Leading the Factory Forward with your host, Lynn Friest. We share interviews with manufacturing experts and strategies for embracing the digital future, recruiting a new workforce, finding new business. Lynn is an advanced manufacturing strategist and leadership consultant who is on a mission to show manufacturing leaders how to improve their current operations while preparing for a digital future. And here's your host, Lynn Friest.
Hello, and welcome to this episode of Leading the Factory Forward. This is episode number 57, and it's on becoming an elite road warrior, an interview with Bryan Paul Buckley. Again, in this podcast, our goal is to help you create a compelling future for yourself, your teams, and your organization. And I encourage you to visit my website and download the summary at the bottom of the podcast episode and use that as a tool to capture notes as you start your exploration of this episode's concepts. Or to help you get started on your journey and to stay up to date on new episodes, download the free worksheet, 3 steps you need for a more productive workday. Now, in this episode, I'm going to be talking to Bryan Buckley, an experienced and very dynamic person and a very good business traveler. I met Bryan in a mastermind group and began learning about his approach to business travel and life some time ago. Bryan's goal is to help other business travelers be great for themselves, their family, and their work. Bryan has identified 6 key energy habits, 3 of them physical and 3 mental. They are move. In other words, he talks about moving the body and resting your mind. Fuel, number 2. And there he has the concept of clean and green as far as what you eat. Number 3 is rest, having sleep strategies to help you stay at your best on the road. Perform. A lot of this has to do with how you plan your time. Use the time you have on the road to the best advantage. Then, number 5 is develop. How are you working to improve yourself and your performance both on the road and at home? And number 6, and I think maybe for me the most important, is connect. And by that he says, how do you stay connected with those you love even though you may be traveling? And he has wonderful examples about how to do that. So please join me in listening to what Bryan has to share and how it might help you create physical and mental energy habits that you can navigate during the coming year. And they can be useful whether you're on the road, as Bryan, originally designed this, or even working from home. What I've found is these habits work in either case. Welcome, Bryan, and I've provided a little bit of introduction to the audience already, but I wanted you to actually be able to speak for yourself. So tell us a little bit about who you are, where you've been, and what you're up to these days.
Well, Lynn, thanks for having me. I'm honored to be part of it. I'm excited to see you grow and your development and your niche has been absolutely awesome. So I'm a road warrior and most of my time is on the road. I have a dad who was a business traveler, so I've known that lifestyle. And now I'm passing that on to the rest of my family, but trying to do it in a better way. So yeah, I've just always been somebody who's been a high achiever, high energy. I use the analogy of a high performance car. Where a high-performance car is always going 100 miles an hour, looks great on the outside, and even on the inside of the car, looks it's vacuumed, it's polished, it looks great. Just don't open up that engine, and when that ends up happening, then it's exposed. And I think that's kind of part of my journey and part of my story. And the moral of the story was, I thought I was the Energizer Bunny, and everybody called me that, Lynn, for the longest time. But I learned the hard way that the Energizer Bunny actually uses rechargeable batteries. And it took that long haul to kind of realize, wow, that's, I was not recharging my batteries, hence a physical crash, emotional crash, and having to learn how to do it all over again. And in my case, to figure out how do I do that on the road, and hence where Elite Road Warrior was born.
Great. So I know you've got 6 key points or key habits, and maybe you could share those with us.
Sure. Actually, got a deal today, Lynn. They're buy 5, you get 1 free. So since with you, I'm going to give you the first 5 for free. So nothing but bonuses for all listening. So anyway, all joking aside, I had written a book called Elite Road Warrior, which launched last April, 6 Energy Habits to Master the Business Travel Life. And really the origin of the content, this framework, if you will, came from how did I learn how to recover, after I had burned myself out in every possible way. that I had to figure out, well, how do I get my health back physically? And then how do I mentally get back to where I need to be? So the energy habits were really kind of foundational for me to kind of get my groove back, if you will. So 3 are physical and 3 are mental. And I had to figure out how to just do them on my own, let alone transfer them to the road. So the 3 that are physical are move, fuel, and rest. And each one of those, Lynn, come with a formula. How do we implement that? How do we do those? So move has what's called the increase M4X formula. So think about an up arrow, increase. M means movement. 4X is in 4 ways. So it just simply asks the questions of, how do I stand more? Think up on your feet, not down on your butt. How do I walk more? Think forward, not just still. How do I run more? Which just simply means getting my heart rate up. It doesn't mean going for a 5K or a marathon. It's simply, how do I get my heart rate up on a consistent basis? And then lift more is, how do I strength training? So how do I leverage, whether it's just body weight or resistance bands or dumbbells? And obviously things are very limited for those that travel. So I need to make sure that I can implement M4X, increase M4X on the road by learning to walk more, stand more, run more, think cardio, and lift more, think strength training. So that's move. Then it also links into energy habit number 2, which is fuel. And fuel, we look at food as fuel and fuel as energy. And everything we do with the energy habits, why we move more on the road or at home or whatever we're doing, is to give us more energy. And it says, especially with food, the food that we're putting into our body, is it providing us more energy? So learning to use what we call the MTHC formula, which is an acronym that stands for Make the Healthiest Choice. When I always made the largest choice or the easiest choice or the quickest choice or the tastiest choice, especially if it's on a corporate credit card. And I realized that it was not always the healthiest choice. And a lot of times those bad food decisions, affected my afternoon because of what I chose to eat for lunch, and sometimes other people's, affected them as well, or a late night dinner and eating something that was just way too heavy and ordering desserts, which was more than I would have just paid for a meal on my own, that type of thing. And eventually just really realizing the direct correlation between what I put in my body, whether it's a liquid as in water, or whether it's food, or whether it's a snack, that it's going to be food as fuel, fuel as energy, and learning to just teach myself, how do I make the healthiest choice? So it's learning to continually hydrate. So how am I putting early and often, I'm putting water into my body. It's learning to look at food for what's clean and green. So think about less ingredients, less processed, more dark greens, and more vegetables. And then carrying a controlled substance. On the road, oftentimes I very easily get caught off guard. And next thing you know, a plane's delayed, or I miss a meal or whatever. And then I get desperate and make a bad food choice, and it affects everything else. So learning to have healthy snacks that are with me that provide me what? Energy. So that's the second part. Third part, and the last part of physical energy habits, is rest. And rest has 3 parts of that, and that's the strategic resting formula. And strategic means that it's intentional. We have to make sure we do it, which is sleep. Sleep, our biggest performance enhancer in everything we do, especially those that travel. And we talk about within that learning to improve, then increase, because oftentimes what we do is we try to just, add 2 extra hours of bad sleep. Doesn't help at all. So we need to improve the quality of our sleep. Then we can increase the quantity of our sleep. We talk about breaks, and we define a break as move the body, rest the mind. And most people do the opposite. They move their mind and they rest their body. So they go from a computer screen to a phone to social media, and they're still sitting on their butt. They're not moving at all, and they're not giving their mind a break, and they've not allowed their body to move. So we look at within at least the elite road warrior world, how do we move more on the road by taking breaks and giving your brain a rest? If it's micro breaks for seconds, just standing and stretching. If it's a mini break where I'm going to the bathroom, or I'm getting some water and I'm just not looking at a screen, I'm going for a walk, or something where it's a lunch break or a dinner break where we're not in front of the screen, which I call the laptop lover, where we're allowing ourselves to have that break so we can go back in and be sharp later on in the afternoon. And then the last part of that is downtime. And we define downtime with the elite road warrior as time to be, not to be on. And I find myself always on, and which is not healthy, especially on the road. So it's learning that I've got time just to be. And for me, that may mean going to Barnes & Noble for an hour and just looking through magazines and books. And I'm a hot tea guy. And just getting a hot tea. And I'm just allowing myself to just recharge. I'm a big sports fan. So that may mean going to a stadium while I'm on a road and catching a game. Even if it's a cheap seat, I'm only there for 3 or 4 innings. It's just allowing me to have some time to be, not to be on. So those are the 3 physical energy habits. Comments, questions, Snyder Marks, Lynn?
It sounds great. And, these are the things I think both I and certainly the folks listening to this, I think we all struggle with in today's world because, like you say, it's easy to be on. It's not as easy to be mindful or, thinking about what you're doing. So
Exactly.
I think this really, your book is great as far as creating habits so that once we've made these choices, practice them a few times, then it all becomes easier. We've got bad habits in the past. This is a way to make really, I think, some really good habits.
And you're exactly right. And, my context is the road because I am a business traveler. So, but these three physical energy habits and then the three we'll talk about in the mental energy habits, we apply them everywhere. I'm not traveling right now. And as a result of that, doesn't mean that I'm going to move any less or view food as fuel is energy, or rest any different. The context is just different. But to your point, bad habits are good habits, as long as we get into the habit of them in a positive way, become very mindful of them. And with the mindset of, I want more energy. I want to be at the top of my game. I want to be the Energizer Bunny, but also that uses rechargeable batteries. So I want to make sure I take care of that high performance car when I'm not always putting in cheap gas, or, I'm avoiding my oil changes, or I'm getting, quick and cheap repairs. But I'm willing to really take care of that car because it is a high performance car. And for those that want to perform at a high level, and it doesn't matter what other people are, in their status. That's not the point. The point is we know where we are as a performer or where we are as a leader. And are we doing the best? And you think about an elite athlete or an elite performer, musician, whomever, they don't have the same habits, Lynn. They don't have the same habits as everybody else. They're going to sleep differently. They're going to eat differently. They're going to take care of their body differently. And that's why they're perennial. That's why they are elite. And my hope and my challenge, especially with those that are business travelers, is how do we look at that? Not be the exhausted or the existing road warrior. Let's move our way up to an experimental road warrior, and where we try things and we learn things and we start to get to that we're implementing these ideas and we start to see the elevation of that to get to the point where that perennial elite in whatever we're doing.
I think that's great, Bryan, because you've illustrated that it's a journey and it's not just a huge leap they have to make all at once. And I think that's helpful for all of us.
You're exactly right. And athletes are the same way. Top performers are the same way. It takes the time to practice, to learn the nuance of what works for them. And the nuance may be the context and making the best of that. So would you like to talk through the three mental energy habits?
Absolutely.
Perfect. So the first one is perform. And really, that's why we do what we do. For me as a business traveler, that's why I'm on the road. I'm there to perform. But I also want to perform at the highest level. So we look at that and we call it, how do we develop a road plan? So for that is we're making sure that the formula is going in. I'm on the road here. I need to make sure that I'm looking at my road rhythm. How do I make sure that within my day, I've got my early morning, which is personal. Then I've got my work morning. Then I've got my work afternoon, and then I've got my evening. Well, sometimes that is a work evening if there's a client dinner or an event to go to. Sometimes it's my own. So I learned to live in these blocks, Lynn, of how do I best maximize my time, and I'm really thinking through contingency plans. Definitely for those that are on the road, and if you travel at all, things don't go as always as planned. And there's a lot of travel friction, which means you've got delays, you get traffic, you have cancellations, or just changes that really mess with your schedule and can adjust and affect your energy. So the second part of the plan with intentional performance formula under perform energy habit is making sure that we are thinking through, okay, well, how do I handle roadblocks? But we look at roadblocks in a different way. Instead of it being a negative thing, I look as a positive thing. I'm blocking out time on the road where I can work, you've heard the term block and tackle with football. Mm-hmm. Teams that don't block and tackle well lose games. They give up needless penalties and needless points. And I don't want to be that way on the road. I watch guys who get 15, 20 minutes of extra time. They're complaining. They're flipping through Twitter or social media. And nothing wrong with that. But then they wonder why they're always working. They wonder why they're not effective. And they have inconsistent results. Well, I know why. If I get a 15-minute block of time, that roadblock, guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to block and tackle. I'm going to find that 15-minute window and I'm going to choose one specific task. Let's say email. I'm going to look through all the 40 emails I have because of whatever I've been doing that I've not been able to check email. And then I'm going to figure out what are my top 3 emails that I need to return. So I'll take a couple minutes of that 15 minutes and I'm going to peruse and see all of those emails. What are the game changer emails I need to change? Once I pick those three, I'm going to order them. Which one's the first one? Which one's the second one? Which one's the third one? And then I do that again. I do that again until that 15, 20, 30-minute time block, whatever it is done. Same thing with voicemails and making sure that I'm using time wisely, working in the margins, or as I joke around, I call marginal work, but in a good way on the road, that I'm leveraging that time. And then the last part of that is energy pacing. How do I make sure that I'm matching my task with my energy? So whether you are working in a plant or you are on the road, making sure, okay, man, my energy's low. Well, why right now? Did I not eat lunch? Did I have a bad lunch? Am I tired because I didn't sleep well last night? Can I adjust what I'm working on right now to maximize that energy and make better decisions? That's energy habit number 4, just 2 more. The last one is develop. And develop is usually the one that's the most avoided with energy habits because it takes extra time and effort. It's not reading an email or just doing something for work. It's how do I personally, professionally develop? And that's called the invest in you formula. How do I put back into me to make me better? It's going to the gym and shooting more free throws if I'm an athlete. It's spending more time practicing or learning, wow, this is a new way of doing this. So it's taking that time to be able to develop. 3 parts of the invest in you formula is how do I sharpen the mind, which is putting good content in. And then the second part is process the thoughts. How do I get good content out? I'm good at putting it in. I'm not always great at getting the content out. So I have what's called an Elite Road Warrior journal. And in the aspect of that one part, it's called Think Space. And so that allows me, Lynn, that anything that I'm thinking about, whether it's my day, whether it's an idea, I have to develop a podcast episode, or I'm speaking somewhere, or it's just something that I want to do for an article on LinkedIn or whatever. I'm going to use that to be able to take that content and get it out and put it into a centralized location. And the last part is called Monitor the Heart. It's asking, how am I really doing? For those of us who are in leadership, it's easy to get jaded, cynical. For those of us that travel, it's easy to get very, very, just kind of cold-hearted, if you will. And Monitor the Heart is making sure I'm asking specific questions, 3 questions backwards, 3 questions right now, and 3 questions forward, asking how I'm really doing. I'm looking at my big wins. I'm looking at how far did I get on my what I call the key 3, the 3 areas that are the most important for my day. And I'm looking at going, what did I learn? What can I improve? It's learning how am I really doing? It's saying the lessons that I can apply that could affect me today. It's looking at what I'm excited about. What are my key 3 for the day? They're nothing life-changing questions of that, but it exposes kind of where my heart really is. So that's energy habit number 5, develop. The last one is connect. And connect is really important for those that are on the road. For the longest time, Lynn was what I call a check-in guy, which means that I was a great check-in guy. And it was always the worst time. My daughter's at piano lesson, my son's at football practice, my wife's sitting down with the kids for dinner. Oh, it's bedtime now. It was all about me and my schedule. And I had to learn how to become a connecting guy, which means that how do I leverage the road and things I wouldn't normally do at home, I can do that on the road with there. And so that became very, very personal. I didn't do that for very long. So I created a number of resources for that. So one of the things I decided to do was everywhere I went with my kids, the Flat Stanley character, I took that concept and I put some poster board on the back of that and I had my kids color it. And then I take pictures with the Flat kiddos. So I got Flat Caitlin, Flat Caleb, and Flat Austin. And so everywhere I go, then I'll take pictures of them. They don't really care to see Dad's hotel. They do if all of a sudden Flat Caitlin's sitting there watching an iPad in the room, or Flat Caleb is in a cool rental car that Dad's got next 3 that he's driving around. They love that. So it helps them to include that. My older boys, I would send postcards. They're high schoolers. They could care less about Flat kiddos. But they want postcards, letting them know that Dad's thinking about them. And I could use that tiny little space, Lynn, breathe words of encouragement or inspiration of what I'm seeing in my high schoolers and who they're becoming and catching them do something good. Then with my wife, I created what's called the Not Forgotten Journal. And I found this journal at a Barnes & Noble, ironically enough, on one of my little think space, my downtimes. And I saw, I'm like, man, I got to figure out what to do with this. And I decided, what if I just wrote 2 minutes a day into this journal for my wife? Just 2 minutes, just letting her know she was not forgotten on the road. And it became this long project and gave it to her. It was a game changer in our relationship. And I heard so many road warriors go, man, is there any way you could create that? But obviously something smaller so we can get some quick wins. So I created and branded the Not Forgotten Journal and all these resources, along with what we got, these Connect cards. So we take these cards that are colored by kids and they're for kids, and they actually support a nonprofit called Warrior Wagons. A family in our church lost a child to pediatric cancer, which I can't even fathom. going through that. And they learned so much at that time and all these resources and things that they were hoping to be able to get to take care of themselves that never happened. Then they decided, well, why don't we solve that problem? So all the proceeds of those cards for the Connect cards actually go to Warrior Wagons, so a really, really good cause. So these resources were really created learning how to connect with the family. How am I doing it intentionally? Like I mean to do it. How can I be thoughtful and not reactive? I'm not going to be creative. So, and all those can be found at eliteroadwarrior.com/store. But not a promotion for Elite Road Warrior. It's more if those are resources that can benefit you and strengthen your relationships. That's all that matters to me on that. So there you have it. Those are the 6 energy habits, Lynn.
That is great, Bryan. And I really appreciate your sharing this stuff because a lot of us have good intentions, but don't know how to do it. So as you've described things here, and especially I like the information in the Connect habit, because those are things that I think all of us, whether we're road warriors or even just busy business people, we'd like to do better and
Exactly.
never know how. And you've done the work to actually try these things out, and I really appreciate that. And yeah, well, there will be links to your website and your podcast and stuff like that in the show notes. So we'll be people can find these things out as well as a link to your book. So.
And I appreciate that. And again, Lynn, this is transferable. I mean, you can give a Connect card to your kids, and they will cherish it. It can go in their lunchbox. How they'll be thrilled. My older boys love to get mail, so just the postcards. Even when I'm home, they don't care. It's just that Dad knows they're being thought of. If somebody decided not forgotten journal and just do that as a project, being home, all those are game changers in relationships for those that really matter.
Great. Well, Bryan, I wondered if we could also touch on a recent podcast you put out. And then again, I think of this in terms of the business, the manufacturing leaders that have been going through the shutdowns, the COVID. They're trying to recover and restart their businesses, but it's exhausting. And I think you did a wonderful job in this podcast about how you might be living in the exhaustion cycle. And I wondered if you could kind of do a quick summary of that. And again, we'll have a link to the actual podcast in the show notes.
Well, thank you, Lynn. And yeah, most of my contents, sometimes I feel like I'm a 5th grader that's just a little ahead of the 4th grader. You know what I'm saying? Where it's just somebody who's going through real life, whether it's home right now or traveling, and just learning what are the patterns, talking to the people and seeing what's going on in their life. And I found that I was actually living into what you referenced as the exhaustion cycle. And the exhaustion cycle, I say, has 3 phases. And the first one is called busy. And busy is kind of like that new greeting, Lynn, where it's instead of us saying, hello, how are you? The answer isn't fine. It's, well, I'm busy. And for those of us who are leaders or those of us who are travelers, it almost becomes this badge of honor for us. And then we try to outdo the other person. Well, at least I do. Let me tell you about my week or my travel stretch. Oh, I'd trade for yours in a second. And, it's okay. I mean, we all want to be busy because oftentimes we feel like things are happening. And that's okay with that. But when it becomes our consistent season of life that we're always busy, there's a problem with that. And I put a quote in the podcast by an author named James Gleick in the book called Faster. And I love this quote. It says, our ability to work fast and play fast gives us power. It thrills us. If we have learned the name of just one hormone, it's adrenaline. And no wonder we call a sudden exhilaration a rush. And I found that when I was busy, I was just hurried. And hurried is not a good thing. I don't do a lot of things well when I'm hurried. And I found that my energy was just going all over the place. It was dispersed. And it's the opposite of focused. And obviously what the energy habits are is to help us to be able to focus. So, with phase 1 of the exhaustion cycle, can't stop now. I'm hurried and my energy is dispersed. It doesn't naturally stop unless we choose to stop it. And it often bleeds into phase number 2 of the energy cycle, which is beat down. And for me, when I started feeling beat down, it was kind of going from like, I don't want to do this to I can't take this. And it starts to build in pressure. And I found myself, the more pressure that I had, I started to feel that stress. And obviously, everybody handles stress in different ways. Unfortunately, most of the time, people don't handle it in a very healthy way, especially leaders who, of course, can't stop now, or a business traveler who's always on the road and moving. So when I got to that spot, I'm realizing, wow, man, this stress is not good. And it's really, really wearing me down. And I found for me personally that I needed to learn for healthy outlets. Because for me, it would have been vino on the road or Oreos. Hide the women and children. The Oreos are going to get hurt. And I just found myself, the busier I was and the more stressed I became, my energy started becoming decreased. And my stress was increased and my energy was decreased, which is not good. And my 4-year-old would say that no good. And for me, I had to learn there's something's got to change because it is a very thin line and a downward spiral. If you're in beatdown phase, to get into the last phase of the exhaustion cycle, which is burnout. I can't keep going. And sadly, too many of us have been there. It's welcome to Funky Town, and it's not a great place. And people handle things differently. Balls start to drop. I mean, in busy, you're hurried. Beat down, you're stressed. Burnout, you're just done. Check, please. I don't want anything else. I have no more bandwidth. And if we're leaders, and which is obviously who listens to your podcast, Lynn, this is not a good place. This is a place where we don't care about results, or we don't care about people, or we only care about results, and we lose our ability to just have that compassion and be what a leader needs to be. For me on the road, I get very, very cynical, and I just don't care. Ironically, I listened to a commencement speech by Brian Dawson. He used to be the former COO of Coca-Cola. And he was talking about imagining life's kind of this game where you're juggling 5 different balls in the air, and he named them. I think there were work, health, family, friends, and just your spirit. How do you respond to people? And he mentions that 4 of them are actually glass balls. Only work is a rubber ball, and it will bounce back. But unfortunately, if you do drop one of those others, something bad's going to happen. And Elite Road Warrior is based on 3 focus areas: work, health, and home life. And when my health is struggling, it affects my work. If I'm stressed because of something going on at home, it affects my work. So it's not necessarily that I have to have balance in those. It's just that I'm working on having effort. And I do realize that my health and my home life, in our analogy, they're glass balls. And I came very, very close to that, affecting both of those by getting 40 pounds overweight on the road and being very disconnected with my wife, where finally she said, something's got to change. And I realized at that point, my energy was depleted. And I struggled for a while with there. And I realized that actually the solution isn't just wash, rinse, repeat, just a weekend, a little bit more sleep. It had to go so much deeper to get there. And actually in the podcast, I have a Psalm 23 revisited. And it says this: the road is my dictator, I shall not rest. It makes me lie down only when exhausted. It leads me into deep depression. It hounds my soul. It leads me into circles of frenzy for busyness' sake. Even though I run frantically from task to task, I will never get it all done, for my ideal is within me. Deadlines and my need for approval, they drive me. They demand performance from me beyond the limits of my schedule. They anoint my head with migraines and my inbox overflows. Surely busy, beatdown, and burnout shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the bonds of exhaustion cycle forever. And obviously it's a play on words, Lynn, but it's one of those where it's a scary place. And unfortunately, too many leaders in numerous different industries, especially in your industry, these are high performers. They're leading a number of people. There's so much at risk. And learning how to take care of ourselves through the energy habits could really be the game changer and lead us into the energy cycle to rest, to refuel, and to re-engage and go back out and do it again.
Great stuff, Bryan. I really appreciate this. And, I can really relate to this because, again, in my experience in the factories, it was often a scene of where we're just running around with our hair on fire. And at the end of the day, we don't feel like we got anything done. Well, your books and your podcast gives us some strategies to, 1, change that, but 2, how do we raise our awareness to these things? Because often in the midst of all our running around, we just don't even see it until it gets to be too late, as you described. So,
exactly. And I think that unfortunately, Lynn, that is the problem of a leader, is what makes us so good can also take us down. The last people we want to hear from is somebody close to us that things aren't good in our life. I interviewed a high-performing business traveler, which will be an upcoming episode interview on my podcast. And he was talking about it took his son, who went to college and was making some major life changes in a period of 6 months. And his son was his wake-up call. And he said that his son very humbly came to him and said, Dad, you're just so busy, I didn't want to bother you, but there's some things that have been changing in my life and you didn't even notice. Mm-hmm. And this guy, Justin, it put him, this is a high performer, a sharp guy, big guy, mid-30s even, or late 30s. But it stopped him in his tracks. And it was just neat to hear his vulnerability and listening to my story and others, that it went too far. It doesn't have to go that way. And honestly, Lynn, we have to go to energy habit number 5 of develop, and we have to slow down enough to realize what's going on in our world. You use the word awareness, which is a great word for that, and learning to apply some of these habits that are here, and then having some accountability to make sure they're continuing to develop and make the change we need to be the leaders that we ultimately want to be, whether it's in our businesses or in our families. We need to be able to make sure we are at the top of our game.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I love how, as you've said, some examples how our kids can actually inform us sometimes. And I remember an instance where I was, complaining about something, and my 12-year-old daughter said, "So what, Dad?" I'd made this into a huge,
That's awesome.
a huge event. She says, "So what?" So, yeah.
Out of the mouth of babes, right?
Yeah.
I mean, out of the mouth of babes, are we willing to listen? My kids, I've always taught them to say, "No big deal."
Mm-hmm.
So they're getting worked up over something. I tell them, "No big deal." Well, guess what happens when Dad gets a little bit of, busy, beat down, burnout? "Hey, Dad, no big deal." Mm-hmm. And it's that moment of truth and that non-filter from them, just like your daughter. "So what?" Will we hear that, as opposed to being in a bad place and come after them, when actually they're a gift that to wake us up into reality and be aware, man, this is, like my 4-year-old says, that no good, to make some changes.
Yep. Well, Bryan, I want to really thank you for sharing this with our audience, and I appreciate you've given me many gifts over the years of your knowledge and these ideas in the Elite Road Warrior. So again, thank you, and look forward to maybe, we'll stay in touch, and then maybe we'll find some new opportunities to share your wisdom on the podcast in the future sometime.
I would love it, Lynn. And I appreciate just your ability to want to be able to take certain contents and put it into the context of your world. And I think that's great. And I think the easiest excuse for a business traveler or, somebody in your markets to just be, "Oh, well, that doesn't relate to my world," and discount it. And I think, as we as leaders try to make sure we're humble enough to be able to make the adaptation to curate that content, but then also translate it into our own world to make sure that we are the best that we can be in our work, but also in our health and our home life. So honored to be on the podcast, Lynn. Big fan of yours. Thanks for the time.
Thank you, Bryan. Again, my thanks to Bryan for sharing his experience with us. As a quick recap, we talked about the 3 physical energy habits, the 3 mental energy habits. And even though you might be at home, developing these habits can help you be better for yourself, your family, and your work. So what's up next? We're going to continue our mix of solo and episodes and interviews with experts. Some will be in manufacturing, but also some will be in areas that just help you build your business. Also, in the last episode of the month, I'll be sharing my thoughts and ideas on becoming a silver entrepreneur, and really how silver talent might be able to help you in your business, or help you if you want to become one yourself. And in our next episode, we will talk about how I think your mindset is key to becoming a silver entrepreneur. And I'll share some interesting resources to help you think about how to build a mindset that's useful for you. And once again, I encourage you to visit my website and download the summary at the bottom of the podcast episode as you start your exploration of this episode's concepts. And to help you get started on your journey and to stay up to date on new episodes, please download the free worksheet, 3 Steps You Need for a More Productive Workday. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.